thank you. Oh my God.
All right, so like I said, we're going to do a little bit different this time. You don't have to do anything. I just want you to watch this video, okay? I want you to watch the video, and she's going to talk to you. Her name is she's called the Art Sherpa. You can find her on Facebook, or I'm sorry, on YouTube. And she teaches different paintings. And she teaches beginner, she teaches intermediate, and she teaches advanced. Okay? So, can everybody see the screen? All right. We got everybody? All right, I'm going to start the video. Please pay attention to it. This is part of class because I'm going to be talking about things that she talks about in the video. I'm going to be talking about during our painting session.
Hi, I'm here. It is my great pleasure to teach painting to brand new artists and beginners. And this video is going to give you some information that I think every beginner just has to have, probably doesn't know if they haven't painted in a while. So get ready, get out your art materials, and show you how to make the most of your painting experience. Now, the first thing I want to tell you is that this is acrylic paint. Acrylic paint comes in a lot of different formulations, but the one we're using specifically here is called heavy body. And you know it's heavy body because it's really thick and it holds its shape. When I get my acrylic paint out, it comes in a tube. I'm going to open the tube by unsqueezing it. I'm going to squeeze from the back end, not too hard. The paint starts to come out like toothpaste. I press down and I drag off. That is how I get the paint out of my tube. Believe it or not, that's something you might not know. It's great to know and see how it's done if you've never seen it before, because if you were sitting at home, you'd be like, I don't know how this thing comes out of the tube. Now, another thing that I want to talk to you about is your brush. Your brush has some parts. It has the handle. It has something we call the ferrule, that's the metal part, and it has something in the end we call the filament or the bristles. In the filament and bristles, you have three parts. You have the heel, that's right here by this barrel, the middle of the brush called the belly, that's where it drinks up and holds all the paint, and the toe, which is where all the paint is released, or the business end of your brush. This particular brush is a cast tongue, my Art Sherpa line. So basically, it's a pointed filbert. That's a brush that's sort of rounded at the end. Brushes come in a lot of different shapes. Acrylic paint is thinned with water. That's right, just regular tap water from your jar. And it's always nice to have 1 to 2 cups of water out, so you always have clean, fresh water to work from. Now, it's nice to have something to put your acrylic paint on. I particularly like to use something called a Filbert Peel palette. These are special peelable palettes that are made for acrylic paint that can take the water. But you can use polystyrene paint. That's completely fine as well. You just want something that is disposable because acrylic paint, once it's dry, is very hard to remove. I also like to have a paper towel over here to help me wipe off extra paint or make sure that I've gotten all the pigment out of my brush. Whenever I start painting, I'm going to want to take my brush, dip it in the water, and drag off the excess like I'm doing here. Generally, a brush like this will carry 1 to 2 drops of water. The water is used to thin the acrylic paint. That helps make it more blendable or brushable. Because right now it's actually quite thick and unwieldy, so you've got to change its consistency sometimes to get a smooth brushability from it. It's very different than craft paint in that way. Now I'm going to show you how to correctly load a brush. When I want to load a brush, I'm going to dip in the water, drag off the extra drop, about 1 drop. I'm going to come to the edge here of a pink color. I'm going to the outer side, and then I'm going to flip the brush. This is going to load the belly of my brush and allow me to get as much paint in there as possible. The brush is drinking it in. I don't come from the middle like this, because what will happen if I do that is that my paint will get contaminated and I'll waste a lot of paint, and we're all on a budget, so this is just a great way to save money. You might also notice that I've got little spaces between my paint pots. This gives me room to mix things and have different spots in my area to mix, and that's a great strategy if you're trying to have a nice relaxing time for an entire painting. Now, in acrylic paint, when you want to change colors, you're going to do that one of 2 ways. You're going to do a vigorous rinse out where you remove all the color from the brush, or you're going to do a light rinse out where you remove some. Okay, and you do that for different reasons. For most of these lessons, we're going to do vigorous rinse out. And let me show you the difference here using my towel. So if I rinse out too lightly, if I'm just very precious about it, and I just go back and forth in the water, you can see I didn't get very much acrylic paint out. What I want to do is come into my water and vigorously rinse out my brush. I can even gently press it across the bottom of the glass. You can see that gets all the pigment out of my brush. Another term you're going to hear me using a lot is loosely mixed or thoroughly mixed. When you're loosely mixing something, you're going to take some of this, loading it in the way I originally showed you, and then you're going to grab a little of another color, you're going to incorporate them or fold them in together, but you're going to allow them to be very, very streaky. If I want to thoroughly mix it, I would come together, mixing it back and forth into a new shade of color is created, this yellow-green here. See how this is working? It's a nice yellow-green, and I have thoroughly mixed it. If I came back with a little bit of dark green, just fold it, that would be loosely mixed again. Now let's vigorously wash out our brushes. Alright, just in case you don't already know how to do this, I want to show you how you can easily use this printout to transfer an image onto your canvas. So you take your printout, and you're going to go and rub a pencil where all the lines are. All the places there are lines, you can rub a pencil. You're going to be leaving a little bit of graphite behind doing this. You can see I'm holding the pencil very flat to the paper surface. I'm trying to make sure that I catch all the places that I can see the lines. And I can see the lines vaguely through the paper. If you can't see the lines, just go like this and get the whole thing. Sometimes that'll happen. If you've ever done any rubbings, this is a very similar process. Right? So when I'm sure that I have everything I need to get the image on, I'm going to put this against my canvas and place this where I want it. For this particular one, I like to have this down here a little bit. Remember, if ever you're using your printer to do something that you're transferring, you can change the size usually in those settings. Alright, but this is here for you, so you're going to just tape this down. The reason I always tape down the things that I transfer is so that they don't shift or move, and so that I can check them as I'm going to make sure I've gotten everything. Whenever I'm taking something and I'm turning it into this type of transfer image, there's some important things to know. One, tracing is not cheating. Just like painting, drawing is an art skill. It's one I highly encourage you to learn because it's fun, and it's just as accessible as painting. But you may not have that skill just yet. Just quite yet. So if you don't quite have that skill, it's okay to use this method to get the basic shapes and construct onto your canvas. All artists, including fine artists, use a transfer method because art materials can be pricey, and you don't want to be doing a big messy sketch on your nice canvas or your beautiful paper. So now I can check to see. Now I'm not going to worry about my little stones, but if I was worried about getting these little shapes, like they were important to me, I could also use that to get these on. All right, let's lift and see how it's going. There we go. Now I have a very faint line transfer. This is so light. This is what I usually start my stuff with. You can barely see it. It is not going to seep into your paint. It's fantastic. The magic tool I use here is just like an HB pencil that kids have at school. All it takes to transfer anything to your canvas. Remember to be forgiving of yourself, man. It's okay to transfer things on. We can't be just willy-nilly wasting canvases having a little sketch idea on there. But definitely give a chance to try some drawing. It's fun to experiment with too. Alright, let's play with mark making. Mark making is pretty much everything we're doing with the brush. It's how we cover a canvas, and it's how we get effects. Now, before we start mark making, let's look at our surface real quick. This that's provided in your pack is a canvas board. It's flat, it's not stretched, and it's perfectly fine. One is not better than the other. It's just about preference, and I find with my students who might do 100 or 200 paintings, because this is a very addictive hobby, that sometimes the flat storage is very helpful, and these are really easy to frame. So that's why we're using this. But you could use any surface that you want to do for acrylic paint. This particular surface has something called a tooth. It's got a texture to it. So even though this isn't stretched canvas, they've imprinted a tooth on it, and they finished it with a coat of something we call gesso. That's just a preparation that we have for acrylic painting. It just helps the acrylic paint get on the canvas and stick there. It has little tooth in it too. It is not strictly necessary for acrylic paint, but it is a nice little luxury that you get back, and I certainly enjoy it. But it's already on my surface ready to go. Let's dip in the water and get one drop, and let's start thinning the acrylic paint. I'm going to come back and get another drop. You can see I'm pulling it out and thoroughly incorporating, one more drop, the water into this paint. Now what that's going to do is improve the fluidity of the paint and allow a lot of it to get up into my belly and a lot of it to easily flow out the tip of my brush. Now when I come here, I've got a couple places to make mark. I have the very tip, the very toe, and I'm going to make little tiny marks. You practice this too, coming down. Little tiny thin marks. When I want to make a curve, I actually turn my hand a little bit and the brush to get little curves. If I want to make a thicker line, I'm going to press harder. If I want to make a thinner line, I'm going to press lighter. Thicker is a fatter, more heavy line. And then a thin line from this brush is just by using a very light pressure. Other way you can make a mark with this brush is on the flat. This is how we cover large surfaces in big areas, is using the flat. Also, because of this curve, you have another really fun thing that you can do, which is this sort of side stroke. And as you can see, it leaves this really beautiful edge.
Pay attention to this part.
That beautiful edge, that's another thing you can do, and it gives us a
We're going to be using that technique
that you might not. So here we go, making nice little lines. These are the kind of marks that our brush will make. Now in that, we do a couple things with that. So the first one is, we're going to do a nice wet into wet blend. Acrylic paint blends best when it's still wet. So let's get a little of our black paint.
This is
Come
important.
back here and put it down fresh so that it's nice and wet. There we go. Putting down a nice coat. I'm going to wipe off the excess paint on my towel. Rather than rinse it out, that leaves a little bit of pigment in my brush. And you'll see that demoed several times. And I'm going to come into my white. I'm going to dip into my water. And I'm going to show you how we can blend the paint. I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to put these two colors right next to each other. Now, where these two are next to each other, you can come between them and blend up and down, creating a gradation as I'm moving through. See how that creates a light value, a slightly darker value, and darkest value. I can wipe off my brush. There's not very much
using that
pigment on
for
it.
tonight's painting, so you're going to want to pay attention how she's doing
Just
it.
improve that blending, that transition from light to dark. This is probably what's the most frustrating for acrylic students because their paint is drying very quickly. Your acrylic paint is drying in the air, and it's probably drying really quickly till you need to dry it for a dry brush technique, and then it is never drying quickly enough. It's just a weird fact of acrylic paint. To do a dry brush, which is using a paintbrush loaded with very little water over a dry surface, your surface and your brush need to be fairly devoid of any moisture. Now you can wait until this dries, You can use some type of fan, or you can use a hair dryer to dry it. You'll know that it's dry when the surface changes how shiny it is and it doesn't look wet anymore. But you can also come and touch it. If you're in dry and arid conditions, you'll find it dries faster. And if you're in very humid conditions, you may find it dries slower. Let's vigorously wash our brush out. Remember, just shake that out. You want to hear that, and you can always check it on the towel. See, I've still got a little bit of pigment in there. Now I have a second jar of clean water, so I can see how that's going and check I'm getting it out. It's harder to get a color like black out than any other color, so it's worth checking on your towel to see how it's going. Not only does that help that, but it gets a lot of the water off my brush, because water is what's going to break my brush count, and I'm going to show you more about that when I show you brush care at the end of this video. So I'm going to dry this, and I'm going to show you how to dry brush over it. Okay, let's do a nice little dry brush over this. You can see how that's done. Paint and a little of my white paint. I'm going to loosely mix them together, and I'm going to bring my brush over to the dry canvas. Now, using that 2 fits here and a very light pressure, I'm going to lightly drag my brush over the canvas, letting a lot of what's underneath show through. This is that layering I talk about to my students a lot. You can layer anything. And so I'm just using this. This allows me to create some interesting transitions, some really fun highlights.
Now, if that paper
So you've
was
already
wet,
learned
it
2
would have
techniques
blended
that you need
together.
to for acrylic paint.
You wouldn't have been able to see that blue.
Let's
over
rinse
the
this
black.
out vigorously, and I'm going to show you how to loosely paint something, and then I'll show you how to make a couple of the decorative elements for the snowman. Alright, now if I want to loosely paint something, let's get a little of our pink, our blue, and our white, because these will be a fun color combination together. I'm going to come here and I'm going to loosely paint something. When I loosely paint something, my brush strokes are very open and you can see them. Yeah, you can see all the brush strokes. This is painterly. Sometimes you'll hear me refer to that as painterly or other artists. I'm being painterly. Whenever you hear an artist use the term painterly, all they're saying is that they're not hiding the brush stroke or the medium that they're using by more rigid or practiced techniques. If I was going to try to hide it, I might use my wet into wet blending and my brush to take out these techniques, see this, and make a soft transition between all these colors, hiding the brush strokes that were going on to create it. Soft pressure. In acrylic painting, soft pressure and light pressure is everything. And also water is everything. If you're finding that your paint is dry and it's not painting easily and you have a lot of canvas showing through, here's my vigorous thing. You're going to want to take your brush, load it in the water, load up your paint, both sides. See, I left my 2 drops in there, so that's going to give me a lot of flow. But there's not like a big puddle, because I wouldn't want a puddle. And that's going to let this easily brush over my canvas and color over things. See that? That's pretty easy. But if I went like this, that would be too much water, right? Right there is too much water. And it would look more like this. And you would know you have that because you'd be getting that type of water resistance. There's a couple issues with doing a wash on a straight canvas with acrylic, but the biggest one is that it makes it harder for the acrylic to stick, and you may find that painting subsequent layers is way more challenging than it needs to be. You guys are doing so good. All right, let's real quick see our leaves and our roses, and then I'm going to show you what you have to know about caring for your brush. So to do my basic leaf, I'm going to take a little of my white over here into my green. I can make a line curving on the edge of my brush, and we're going to practice pressing a stroke and pulling it to make a leaf and making lattice work. This lacquer finish on the brush. So it's important that you don't leave your brushes sitting in water at all. other thing that's important to do is not leave them sitting in acrylic paint, because when this dries, your brush becomes a stick. Don't despair if it happens. You can actually work that out with a little bit of soap, warm water, and rubbing alcohol. I have a lot of videos on brush care. It's really doable to repair brushes. That's not to damage them. These can be a little bit expensive and you want them to last as long as possible, right? So the first thing I do before I wash my brushes is I'm going to come over and vigorously swish this out. I'm going to get as much of my pigment out in my water jar as I possibly can before I even begin the washing process. I'm going to go ahead and wipe this off on my towel. Let me get my paint out of the way, and I'll show you how to soak up, wash the paint, what's left in your brush, and have it dry so it's perfect for you to use the next time you're ready to be creative. All right, let's get this brush clean and resting so it's ready for our next creative adventure. Got my brush here, and I can see a bunch of staining. Now, certain colors like phthalo blue or quinacridone or diox, they're very staining to everything. And so you're going to expect to see some discoloration on your white filaments, but you don't want any actual acrylic paint in the brush, and you especially don't want it to get here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush very wet, and I'm going to take my brush soap. This is my personal brush soap that I make for my brushes, and it's very good, but you use what you have. And I'm going to swirl this around and brush back and forth. And you can see, in spite of this looking like it was clean, it was not clean. I'm going to dip again in the water, and I'm going to brush back and forth, getting this pigment out of my brush. That's my whole goal here. Get all this pigment out. Now, once I have the brush thoroughly worked out with soap, I'm going to work this through, and I may even very carefully, and you can see the bend that I have, go back and forth on my hand. Now what I'm not doing is flaring all the bristles out from the center like that. I'm working with the heel of the brush to get things out, and I'll go back and forth. Another thing that I will do is I will pull in very gently with my fingers and try to work out any acrylic paint that's seating in the brush. I'm going to rinse out vigorously. You know, our vigorous washing, right? And you can see a lot of that staining is out. Now, I think it's always good to take a second pass, catch any of that acrylic paint. It might be hiding in my brush for later. Give it another good little back and forth. And then I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to reshape the brush back to its original shape. I'm squeezing the extra water out, and I'm pulling it back into a point. I'm going to very carefully rest it here. Now the paper towel is going to do an interesting thing for me. It's going to wick out water. It's going to allow the brush to dry so that no water gets up in here or into here. These are the two places your brush will get damaged. And if I have any pigment left, it'll generally show on the towel. Do not return your brushes to your upright cup or any storage until you know they're thoroughly dry and the water is out of them, because that will do the most to extend the life of your brushes, on top of not just letting paint dry in them and not leaving them in the jar. I know it seems weird, the water is the enemy of your brush, but it kind of weirdly is, so you gotta do what you can to take those brushes and get them to live as long as possible. That's good health care for your brushes. I'm hoping that these tips make your journey into acrylic painting a little bit easier. Remember, there's absolutely no shame in being a beginner and not knowing things. And I want you to know that of all the artists in the world, the beginners have my highest respect, because it's brave to start something new. And you're brave to start something new. Be good to yourself, good to each other, enjoy the projects that you have, and I want to see you in the easel really soon. Bye!
All right. Do we think she's a little hokey?
Yes.
Yes. But she teaches adults. That wasn't it. She doesn't teach children. She teaches adults. But there was a lot of good information in there, okay? And a lot of the stuff that she talked about, we're going to use. So it is 5:40 now. If you are finished, why don't you clean up, get your stuff put away. If you don't have your aprons on yet, get your aprons put on, and we're going to get started in about 5 minutes.
I put it back. I put it back.
You're gonna want to get out your paintbrushes that are in your kits. Get out your paintbrushes that are in your kits.
Me too. I wanted to use
Okay, good. Oh, there's one on the back. Oh, you're gonna want to sit somewhere that has a table set up. Let's see. Which seat do you like? Here.
Yay.
It's open right here. If you want to sit on this side.
I don't know.
Or is there anybody sitting next to you?
No.
Okay. Or you can sit up in the middle here. So either at the end or in the middle here. Don't get rid of your plastic because it's good to hold your brushes. It opens at the bottom.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
There you go.
Nope, you're okay. I'm great.
Got it? Careful. And don't throw out that plastic. You're going to want to use it to put your brushes away. Yes. We are going to pull out homework, yeah. Just not quite yet. But open up your brushes. Nope, everybody's paints in the same picture today.
I spent 8 next week.
Nice.
On a Monday.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I celebrate when I swim.
Very nice.
Somebody watch it.
Put it off to the side. Is this your bag?
Oh, that. Oh, your house. I never did
All right. How many more are we missing? See how many more are. You're still couldn't find it. Are you sure you brought it? No. There's a purple folder. Anybody see a bag anywhere that's not theirs? That has a purple folder inside of it? No. Good finding it. All right. All right. So now that we have, now that everybody has their bags and their brushes, we're gonna get ready to get started. Don't drink out of the white cup. That's important. You don't want to drink it.
No, it's green.
All right. So we're gonna be mixing your colors today. We're gonna start with. We're gonna have your primaries, which is your red, blue, yellow, plus your black and your white. When I do my paint parties, they get more colors.
Yeah.
But we're gonna stretch you a little bit today. We're gonna work on some of the skills that we've been working on using just the primary colors to create our pictures, okay? I like this picture because it shows you. It's right down the center of the picture. We have your primary colors. As you add more and more white, the colors are getting lighter. As you slowly add bits of black, the colors get darker. Okay? We're going to use a couple different painting techniques today. And some of them you heard the Art Sherpa talk about. Okay? Dabbing or stamping. Splatter. Outline and fill in. Swirl. Dry brush. Sgraffito. I can never say that word correctly. Sgraffito. Hatching. Using thick and thin. Stippling, which we've talked about with all of the techniques that all the different mediums we've used so far. Wet on dry and blending. Now, you're all wondering, what are we painting?
A sunset.
Okay. Before we get started, can anybody tell me what orientation your canvases are in right now? Vertical. I haven't heard it yet.
Hot dog.
Hot dog?
Yeah.
Nope, not hot dog.
Hamburger. Hot dog.
All right, I've never heard it called hot dog and hamburger, but I guess I could understand why it's called hot dog and hamburger.
I don't get what it's
Portrait. This is called portrait mode. This is a portrait. It is up and down. If you turn it sideways, it's called landscape. I want everybody to turn their canvases landscape. And now you're wondering what we're going to paint. We are going to paint a picture. I am going to show you one way that your picture can look. I'm going to teach you today the same way I teach all of my paint classes. When I go and I do a paint party and I teach, whether it's kids or adults, I teach it the same way. All right? And I'm going to teach it. I'm going to work with you the same way, and we're going to use one of my most popular pictures. What's special about this picture is every picture always comes out looking different. I've painted this picture so many times, and never has it come out the same twice. we're going to do Caribbean Paradise. Okay? Now, the way that you see it here is not what yours is going to look like. You're going to use the different techniques that we'll talk about, and you're going to create your own, but you're still going to follow my directions. Okay? So, the very first thing that we do, before we start with the paint, let's talk about some of these brushes. Okay? The brushes that you have to get back to today are the chip brush. This is called a chip brush. And this is a 1-inch flat brush. So a chip brush and a 1-inch. I don't know why it's called a chip brush. I was just told that's what it's called. No, I wouldn't eat it. It's been used by a lot of people. There's lots of paint in those handles. I don't think it would taste very good. I think the burger at Frankie's was better. So, the chip brush and the 1-inch flat brush. On the back of your packaging for your brushes, you're going to see that there is a guide to the different brushes that you have. Okay? So what I'd like for you to do is first find and pull out your round brushes. Do me a favor and pull out your round brushes. Nope. Read the back of your package for the round brush. Nope. Pay attention to the difference between the round brush and the detail liner brush. The detail liner brush is going to be really tiny. The tiny one is the detail brush. Then you'll have 4 round brushes. Okay? Now, you have 1 flat brush. Find your flat brush. The flat brush is flat on top. You have a filbert. You have 2 filberts. Find your 2 filbert brushes. 2 filbert brushes. If you're reading your package, you should be able to find them. Filbert is round at the top. You have a comb brush. The comb brush is flat, but it's not perfectly flat at the top. It's almost like jagged. Where if you hold it against the flat brush, you'll see there's a difference. The flat brush, all the bristles come to a point at the top. The comb brush is more floofy. Floofy. And then you have 1 more tiny filbert. Okay? So, now that we've talked about the different brushes that you have, we're going to talk about the paint. What type of paint was the Art Sherpa painting with? Acrylic. Okay, what type of acrylic? What type of acrylic was she painting with?
Oh, wait.
Huh? No? What type of body was it? Heavy body.
Oh.
It was a heavy body, which meant that it was thick, right? Craft paint that you buy in the little bottles, that's a liquid. It's more liquidy, right? So that's a light acrylic. Okay? We're using a medium body. Okay? I'm going to double check to make sure that's what we got. Yes, this is medium body. So, it's not going to be as thick as what she was using, but you still have to add water to it to thin it out. Okay? So we're not going to have to use as much water as the Art Sherpa did, but you're still going to need to use some water to thin it out. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to your blue-handled flat brush. Your blue-handled, the biggest brush you have in your set. Let's dip it in water and soften the bristles. Soften up those bristles. Now we're going to loosely mix by taking a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow. And we're going to mix it off to the side on our plate. Loosely mix it. That means that it's not fully combined. Just a little bit. Okay? We're going to find our horizon line, and you're going to choose where you want that horizon line to be on your canvas. And you're going to draw a straight line across to make your horizon line. It does not need to be perfectly straight, but this is your horizon line. In the center, you're going to draw a half circle to make your sun. But we're not going to color it in. We're going to paint on the outside of it. We're going to add some yellow. So it kind of looks like a rainbow. I'm going to use the paper towel and just clean off my brush. I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just going to wipe it off with on the paper towel. And I'm going to pick up the pure white. And I'm going to paint in where the sun is. And it's going to pull some of the yellow. But we're using mostly white, and we're making our sun right there. Okay? So now we're going to just dip into the water just a little bit because we want to keep it wet. Dip into the yellow. And we're going to add more yellow on top of the yellow that we did to make sure it's nice and wet. And we're going to fan this out a little bit. Okay, make sure it's staying wet. So you want to make sure that you're using the water to thin out your paint. Okay, now we're going to dip into the red, just a little bit of red. So wet your brush a little bit. Dip into the red. We haven't cleaned our brush. We're keeping it dirty because this is where we're going to blend.
Oh, wow.
doing? Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put this brush down temporarily, and then we're going to pick up that big Filbert brush that we have. The Filbert brush. And we're going to blend in between. Blend in between the yellow and the red. Remember, we want it to be just a little bit wet, but not too wet. And we want to blend in between the yellow and the red. Filbert brush is round at the top. No, the bigger one. Okay? All right. I feel like that I've got too much red coming down into my yellow, so I'm going to dip into my yellow a little bit. And I'm going to blend it a little bit more. So now, right now, I have a yellow line going, an orange line, and then a red. I'm going to keep that orange coming all the way out into the red. So this way it covers up the whole red. All right, so I have the yellow and then I have orange. I'm going to clean off my brushes. I'm going to clean them both off. I hear lots of vigorous mixing going on. Okay, now my brush is still wet. Okay, we don't want them to be dry. We're still using the flat, we're going back to the flat brush now. The flat one. And I'm going to pull a little bit of red.
Is it dry?
Straight red. And I'm going to paint over my orange line with the red and come out a little bit more.
I have to get out. No, you have a red. You got a reddish orange.
Yes, we have red orange going on.
Oh, red orange.
And I'm going to keep pulling the color out until there's no more paint on my brush. I'm going to keep painting that out so I'm going to start seeing the canvas through it. Okay? We're going to keep painting it out because that's cleaning off my brush a little bit, and then I'll go back in and I'm going to blend the line in between the orange and the red. Using the same brush. That's okay. Now do right over the top. And then you blend it. Right up. Right. So now, we want to make sure that that red is nice and wet. So if it's dry, go over the red a little bit more with more red paint. Okay? Because this is the most important part, because we're going to keep blending. So we want that red to be wet. Remember, we're moving fast from here out. Okay? So I have my red is nice and wet. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add just a little bit of blue. When I mix the red and the blue together, what's going to happen? Nope. Keep it dirty. Okay. Now, once I get some blue on there and it starts to look really dark, I'm going to go in with that Filbert brush again, and I'm going to blend in between the red and the blue. It's so strong. So you're going to brush it a little bit, clean it off on the paper towel. Like, just wipe it off on the paper towel. Go in and grab a little bit of red. And then add some more red. And this is how we're going to get a blend. If you're mixing red and blue together, you should definitely not be getting green. It's going to look really dark, but that's okay. It's dark, but it's a dark purple. And we're adding more red on top of that blue to blend it out.
So we can see the purple?
It's going to look like a dark, it's going to look like a dark red or even have a brown tint to it. Yeah. And that's okay right now. See how I'm blending it out? I'm going to clean off my brush. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to blend. I'm going to try and do some more blending just to blend everything down into the middle. There's no right or wrong.
I see purple.
It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. Okay. So now we've got, okay. So now, don't leave them in the water. Just clean them off vigorously, and then just leave them on your paper towel. Wet your 1-inch brush so that it gets some nice water into it. The yellow handled brush. Now I'm gonna start in with and get pure blue. And I'm gonna color in pure blue. I'm using the 1-inch brush. And I'm gonna blend.
Do we put it in water first?
Yep.
Oh wow. Yay. Oh my god.
Or wait, we're not already started that.
So you're going to fill in most of the rest of it, not completely, and I'm going to show you why. We're doing the blue, and we're going to leave the corners of the picture. We're going to leave the corners not painted in with the blue. But we want to make sure we have a good coat of blue on here because we have one more color that we're going to add into this. The quietest I've ever heard this class besides the very first day. Everybody's focused. Okay.
Everybody loves painting, that's right. Really?
So, all right, so once we've got a good coat of blue on there, we're going to dip just slightly into the black. We're still going to have brush, and we're going to paint in black and be able to blend that corner so that it doesn't have a harsh line. Black. There's no messing up, it's okay.
Miss Harrison or blue?
Yes, I'll be over in just 1 second.
Oh, she wants some more blue too.
Yep. Right? You're going to have your own variation of what I have up on the board, up at the front. Okay?
And then they add black.
Yep, so you can go, yep, you're going to go, I would go a little bit more blue and blend the blue into your purple a little bit more. I would do that first.
Mine's okay.
And you can go more blue if you want, out, and then just do like just the corners. Bring in just a little bit of black. Go ahead and use more blue right in here, and that'll blend. Look at that. Yep. When you are done with the black, yes.
I forgot. I was busy.
Must not like money.
Look at. Ready?
How does that look so funny? Oh.
Now just paint the black up in the corner. Awesome. Very nice. What's going on? Now, who did it? Who did the picture besides doing the color wheel? So there was multiple pages, right? We had multiple pages to do. So there was the color wheel, there was the techniques chart, and the shading. Yeah, but you tried. That's all I asked.
She didn't say be perfect.
Yeah, I said you tried. So, and then you were supposed to also do a picture, create your own picture with the color wheel, with the pastels.
I already did that. But I left that home.
How many other people did their homework?
They got real quiet. Yeah. The church got quiet.
You just gotta grab the board.
Oh, you wanna show me? Miss Kimmy.
Nope, just keep mixing vigorously. You're good.
She's like.
Up here. Who else did their homework?
I think so. It started to shape one by the.
But just up here and I hope we work my way back.
You were supposed to, I didn't say you was white yet. I didn't say you was white yet, girl. Look at you getting all creative and organized. What you doing over here?
Yes, but you have to blend without the white. That's all right. All right, who else? You able to do your homework? Okay. You want to pull it out?
Let's fix it. You took it with the pastels? Those are gorgeous.
Awesome. Did you like using the pastels? Yeah? That's awesome. Good job. All right, cool. How'd you do? Okay. Well, the third class is gonna do the
I didn't know that. I said, go put them in the air fryer and it'll be perfect. You ever did that?
Yeah, they do. They
He
go
messed me
over
up. He told me that she did it. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do that.
And you would try yours.
Yes. Awesome. Nice. Good trying. I love it. Thank you. All right. Wait, so let's keep that. Yeah, but it's okay like that because we're gonna go back and do more.
The kids went up. We took them to the museum.
Not surprised.
The fact that she goes
What
What is it?
Stay overnight. You know what I want to do. Especially when they're gonna do more art.
I gotta fix it.
Financial literacy and all that. And the other one. They get to walking science for that. Oh, I would love to do that. Walking through the hall, let's go. Oh, God, I don't know. I was just saying 6 months before I was praying that there will not be my story.
You still did.
That's okay, right? We're good. Look at that little she done added a twist on hers.
Delicious. Everything. Don't lay on my hair, don't. That's one. That's good. Thank you.
Listen, I heard her unsubscribing to people. Wow, really good. If you go to bed, how am I gonna do it? You in a black building where I
All right. You got all the homework and tickets done, right?
Yeah.
Let me see your hands if you do your homework.
It's better this week.
Wait a minute, it's better to sleep?
It sure is. Yes.
I gotta step over here and see. Do it again. Who did your homework this week?
Hands up.
All right, so everybody did their homework. You got a ticket?
Yeah.
All right, because here go the cash.
Here.
All right. Want to hold the
Here
ticket
go
out
the
for
cash.
us?
Andrew's digging it out.
All right, you got your ticket?
Yeah.
Are you ready? 7, 3, 7, 6, 2, 2.
No, mine is 2:45.
Alicia.
This class is a career for you, man. Here we go.
All right. Let's clean off those brushes.
Let me see.
Clean them off vigorously.
You got to take it.
It's legit. It's legit.
All right. All right. So now, who needs more blue? Because now we're gonna go in and paint blue water.
I'm scared.
I'm gonna walk around and cast it out. This is why I usually bring my husband or my kid with me, so he can walk around and do this for me. Wait, you can't. Sorry, I may twitch tonight. I hurt my back over the weekend, and I wasn't canceling on you guys because it was paint night. So everybody just needs one pump. Thank you. So, the front row's done. All right. So I was not canceling on you guys. Everybody's gonna get more blue paint because I know you're gonna need it to do your work.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So everybody will get some more.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're gonna go in with your yellow handled brush again. And we're gonna paint the entire bottom half of this blue. Everything, the whole bottom's gonna be straight blue.
Really? Do we have white?
1 inch. Nope, straight blue. Trust me.
Everything?
Now, what I'd like you to do is to think about your brush strokes. This is water, so how should the water look?
Wavy.
Remember the painterly way or the non-painterly way? We want to brush it so that it's painterly. That means that you see your brush strokes. Make sure you thin out your blue paint because it doesn't need to be real thick.
No, that's okay.
Yes.
I used to.
Do we cover
Yes.
You did? Okay.
We covered that line.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes.
I saw you before. I'm in ninth now.
Oh, you're like, oh.
Those were the days.
Oh, where? Oh, where do?
I used to do that thing.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people out there. A lot of people retiring of the training schools. Good Lord. We did that retire. Let me tell you something. I'm 60 years old. And I'm doing that for 30 years.
Yeah.
Getting in and hurt. Everybody's Oh, no. Oh, yes.
I can. Don't say that. Yeah.
I was like, I can't take that from you. I wouldn't be there.
I said, just go to space. I'm here to figure it out.
How we doing with the blue?
Not good. Really good.
Why not good? It's only one color.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring it. I'm gonna give it to the lady. I'm not gonna.
I don't like
I can't get in her bill.
Sure.
No, I just say it really last.
Happy birthday to July. Major did get suspended.
How we doing?
Get your cup and enjoy.
Everybody should be just about done with their blue.
Almost. Why is this taking so long?
Miss, can I have another paper
I'm
towel?
really not supposed to.
This one put paint on
I'm
this.
sorry.
No, she meant to.
I think it's gonna be-
Calm down, Mom.
And then I'm gonna do one, diuretics. Where you have,
When you're done with that, when you're done painting the blue, clean the brush.
It's like, you think I'm so bad?
Did you thin it out?
Then mine's out.
You didn't thin yours out.
Yeah. It's too dark.
No, you're gonna, but you want to thin, you want to get up closer to your skyline.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll need more blue paint if you did not thin out your paint.
Just give me, let me see, you want me to? It's all right, give me the thing. Most of them are
Yes,
different. Everybody's pretty good with it.
You gotta thin it out. You're not thinning it out.
You guys are on board here. Focus.
You guys have the view back here. You get to see everything.
Everyone, there, great. I'm beautiful. And it's weird, everybody has a different point.
Make sure you're not thinning it out, sweetheart. So you thin it out with the water.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, remember the Art Sherpa? She stressed the fact that you have to use your water to thin out your paint.
I used water because I was running out of glue. Shut up.
We were just talking about how beautiful you guys were doing together. I know how it is, sisterhood's rough. Rough sometimes. Rough sometimes.
All right.
And it wasn't big as a, I don't even know how I do all such.
Where are we at?
I really don't.
Who's enjoying painting? Who does not enjoy painting? That's okay. Who enjoyed using the soft pastels more than painting? Who would rather be drawing with pencils? I want you to start thinking about your final project. You now have been introduced to pencils, colored pencils, soft pastels, and acrylic paint. So, these are options, all options for you for your final project. If you want to spend more time painting to work on an idea for your final project, it's not your final project, but if you want to work on something and get some more techniques and practice painting, I will give you a canvas and paint to go home with today. Okay? With the deal that whatever you paint on it, you put in the showcase. So that it's actually, we're using supplies from class, so we want to use it for the showcase. Okay? So I will give you a canvas to go home with, and I will give you paint in containers to be able to bring home. But you must think about composition and how to put it together and sketch it out and then paint it. This picture that we're painting now, you didn't have to sketch it out because somebody already did a design for you and is teaching you and giving you direction. But you don't want to just go in and start on the canvas and not have a plan. So you want to do things like plan out because supplies are expensive. Okay? But it's not an issue of you getting to use them. Just the deal is that we want to see you put it in the showcase, so that it's a piece that you're taking seriously. And I'm going to ask for you to bring it next week so I can see. If you don't want to show everybody, that's fine. But whatever you paint, I'm going to ask you to bring it next week so I can see what you painted. Okay.
What was that?
Huh?
Next week's my spring break.
Yep.
Ow.
Are they gonna be here for spring break?
Spring break is pretty soon for some of us.
Yeah, I thought that
Friday.
we had planned on still being here.
Yeah, everybody, yeah, that's true, everybody is different.
Yeah.
When are you
Who's
guys?
going away for spring break?
I'm thinking.
Let me work it out. Okay. You'll be here Monday? Okay. Let me work it out. Let me think about it. I may, if we don't do class next week, I'll figure it out before the end of class. I gotta look at the calendar, just because of the way that things are gonna fall, schedule wise.
How many Mondays?
No, not your final project. Whatever, if you decide to take home paint and canvas this week, then I want you to bring in what you've worked on so far on the canvas next week. It doesn't have to be finished, and this is not your final project. All right. Okay. So now.
Oh, excuse me,
Yeah.
it's gonna be not next Monday, the following Monday. For some people, for the Waterbury kids.
For the Waterbury kids, it's not what.
It's not gonna be this upcoming Monday, it's gonna be the following.
Okay.
The
The 18th. Okay. All right. I'll look at it with you moms after. I forget about those things, and my kids one goes to Aces and one goes to Caner, so I don't even remember when the spring breaks are. Trying to keep track. All right. So now we have this big blue thing at the bottom that doesn't really look like water, but we're saying that it's water. And we have this sky thing going on that, again, we say is sky, but it's not looking much like sky, is it? No. So we had to do something to change that. So now the sky has had time to dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with my small flat brush. My small flat brush, not the yellow handled one. And now we have some options, and this is where you start to customize and make it your own. We're working on the sky. So you can do things like, I'm going to be daring. I've never done this yet on one of my pictures. I'm going in with the white. I'm going to do a moon up here. So I'm going to put a moon up here. I've never done a moon on my sunset pictures.
Which one? What could be a sunset?
Okay.
I'm doing a half.
So now I have a moon going on. I'm going to go in and I'm going to also, if I want to make a cloud, the way that I make a cloud is I have the white paint on my brush. And what I do is I pick a spot and I tap. Real gentle. Tap. To make a cloud.
This is making my white paint blue.
It'll have a little bit of blue to it.
Wait, how do we make the cloud?
I will walk around and show everybody how to make clouds.
Do you need to make clouds?
You don't have to. So you
Can
can
we
just
make
like this.
stars?
Yes, you can make stars. Yep. Just little, just tap a little bit.
Can we use the oil brushes like this to make stars?
You can use the detail brushes to make stars, yes.
Why am I cloud? How many is?
What? You know, stop it. Bro, that's just the her.
I'm going to add some stars. So I'm going to go in with my detail brush, one of the small round brushes. And I'm just going to add some tiny little stars.
I did it. That was awesome.
You okay?
What's that?
I want those. It looks like it. Oh my God. I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if it's the shit. I was not.
I did it.
I'm looking like real And it's Rossi, we can actually go to that would actually be so good. Actually. Then I can see the people that come on, you can see the bombs on that. Every meal is a little bit much.
How we doing, ladies? Not good. Why? There's never too many stars.
Exactly.
Her whole entire campus is practically white.
There's never too many stars.
There haven't been any stars.
Oh my goodness, stars every single night.
Yes, there are actually stars every single night. We just can't see them because Connecticut has way too much light pollution.
I love
True.
See, I just found it.
Oh, I see you're using the splatter technique.
High five.
What? Splatter technique.
Oh yeah. So like, everybody.
Say that about your paint.
I'm doing it.
Shut up, saying yo. It's supposed to be right. I used to be all extra. I'm dead serious.
Was that
I'm like, my God. Ooh. Why are you telling me that you're that's all right? That's how people are like, it's just like they tell your whole business and then but why is she
Look at that! I love it!
tell me that? Why
I love it! You guys are
like stuff like that? Like we talk about baby dance. Why not me? Like
Everybody got me. And you're somewhere, people looking at you like I'm like, I'm sorry. Everybody has me.
major tell
It's really annoying.
How do you know that?
That's my girl.
That's our girl. How do you know it's being there? You were celebrating Chinese?
Yes.
So you know my father-in-law. How long have you done it? So you probably know my father-in-law, which is pretty
like
good.
I had a mouse in our kitchen.
Nick Rossi.
And
I don't know, one time thing.
He's been retired for a long time.
I guess the ones that just rose with
Yeah, Dina is my girl. I'm kidding her. She said, yeah, like,
so I'm way back. I'm saying like if you ever see this movie,
I don't know how to even hear about it. But she listens to
He
it.
was
Okay, okay.
he moved down to Florida.
Oh, that's who she didn't like it on down there? Oh, my God. Because
I don't know
her
what
brother's
it's
down there.
But he's in recovery now. He's in Tennessee. But yeah. Oh, yeah. My father in Tennessee.
Julie, she loved the first
His brother.
I didn't know if he was. I didn't know
They're doing the same thing, like, girl.
That's what I was looking at. I was like, why is
What
she
you see, what you see is what you get from her.
absolutely.
It's not gonna, no, she doesn't. But she's got such a.
How do you know she has?
Oh, yeah, that's a girl there. That's my girl.
Yeah.
Okay.
I still owe her,
She has been.
Oh.
I mean, her more than her parents.
Nay.
Okay, this is.
All right. I know you're not done, and that's okay. You can make whatever you want. Okay. Yeah. All right. I want to show you how to make islands. If you want to make an island, I'm going to use my big 1-inch brush again. I'm going to make sure it's wet and wet it to thin out my paint. I have to keep reminding you of this, I feel like.
Yeah.
Even though you guys were laughing at my girl, the Art Sherpa. You guys were laughing at her. But yeah, she had lots of stuff to teach you guys. Some of it you don't remember. The Art Sherpa, the one that you guys watched the video on. All right, so I dipped into the black paint. And I'm going to make an island. And this is the way I do my island. I'm going to pick a point, and I'm just going to kind of bring it down. Bring it down. I use the 1-inch yellow handled brush.
Using
I'm
black.
going to paint it in, and I painted it, yes, I did it with black.
Y'all be having weird meetings.
This is so wonderful. I'm trying to do so good.
She's 14.
Everybody's got a different.
No, she isn't. That looks like you.
All right, so I made my island, and I may want to do another island. So I think I'm going to stick another island over this way. And I'm going to fill it in. And this is going to give that some time to dry. We painted the islands. It's going to give some time to dry. And then we're going to start working on the water. I didn't forget about the water. Don't worry. We got to let stuff dry. So this way we could do some dry brush techniques. Remember we talked about dry brush?
No. Yeah.
Remember the Art Sherpa talked about dry brush? Yeah. Remember I said we were going to use a lot of the techniques and stuff that she taught us?
Oh, you fell asleep. You did fall asleep.
Oh, sibling love.
It's terrible. Oh my God. Haven't seen
All right. Clean that brush real well after you make your island. Clean that brush really, really well.
Wow, this is so nice. This is a like a art.
Ladies, make sure you're focused. We have to keep moving. It's already 7 o'clock. We don't have a ton of time left. And I still have more to teach you.
This is real.
Is that outside?
No, it was a few years back.
That's pretty. That's really
I
pretty.
was like, when I came out of the library, I was like, what?
Oh, that's so nice.
God's
Mhm.
artwork.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So, I cleaned my brush after making my islands if you chose to make islands. I like to make islands because when I make the islands, it means that I could do some really cool stuff in a minute. So, I'm going to dip, make sure my brush is wet. I'm going to get some yellow paint. I'm going to get some yellow.
What brush do you make islands with again?
The yellow handled brush. I call it my workhorse because I make it do everything. So I got some yellow paint on that 1-inch brush. Can everybody see me?
Yeah.
I want to bring my sunset into the water.
Oh my god. That is nice. Shut up, Christian.
Just like that. Huh? Just real light. This is not dry brushing. The waves we're going to do are going to be dry brush. This, we make sure that the brush is wet.
Can I have a new
He's already washing clothes.
And then I'm going to clean my brush. And then I'm going to dry it off as well as I can. I'm going to dry that brush off as well as I can with my paper towels. At the end of the paint party. Okay? So now we're going to go in with that dry brush technique that was talked about. We're going to take that 1-inch brush. We're going to make sure it's as dry as we can have it be.
Just pass the roll. Give it, pass the roll. Pass the roll there, girl.
Who else needed something?
No, me.
Lord. Let's give me time. Yeah, 'cause her back is hurting. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. I lied on what brush we're using because I forgot. We're going to use the chip brush. And we're going to tap lightly into the white paint and then tap to a clean side part of the paper. So tap a little bit of white paint and then tap to an empty part of your paper. You just want to have it tickled, like just a tiny little bit, so it looks like there's no paint on there. It's just lightly there. Just a very little bit. Nope, you don't want to have globs of paint. You want to have it be so it looks almost dry. Yep. And then watch this. You're going to very lightly just touch. Remember how she talked about light pressure? Real light. So it's just grabbing the tooth of the canvas. I'll give you some more white, honey.
Do we do it on top of the rock?
No, not on the rocks yet. The rocks, we're going to do something slightly different. Okay? But just a little bit.
This is so good.
You're doing okay.
Why is the whole look at that? Wait, was I supposed to wet the brush?
Your things are nice.
Raise your hand if you need some more white.
Do I need way more white?
Is he cool like me?
Okay.
Anybody else need white?
No.
Anybody need any other color?
All right, I peek. I just like take a picture.
Just left
Okay.
hand in the brush.
I'm gonna go over here and zoom it.
No.
Okay. I respect your authority.
You need white? You need white? They'll stay with your white? They'll stay with your white hand?
Okay, you done this. Yeah. You too.
More white?
How we doing?
I make cloth.
Okay.
She's counting her water before they eat.
Very nice. Anybody else need any other? Very nice. Yes.
Their own different style.
I'm not looking.
What's wrong? It looks fine. You're fine. It's coming out good. Stop beating yourselves
I
up.
promise. I'm not looking.
You guys are doing good. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go in with one of our detail brushes, which is our tiniest brush that we have. Our tiniest brush.
Number 3.
It's number 1 or 2/0. Sorry, 2/0. Okay. I wet the tip of my brush to loosen up the fibers of the brush, and now I'm dipping into the white. I'm going to use a little bit of white. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make little marks to make it look like I have rocks on top of my islands.
Oh, top of the island. I thought it was.
It's kind of just giving it some reflection.
Yeah, it is.
Give me my glass though. Huh? Then take. But the board's like,
Did I eat the wood?
you know, the.
Okay? Did you three know each other before class? Oh, you did. Very nice. Very, very nice.
I was told that's what you said. I thought you said something else.
I saw my elbow. Okay. Go into town.
Very aggressive.
I'm so proud of you, ladies. You're all doing such a great job.
Mine stops.
So the very last thing that we have to do is sign our names. Very nice.
Top secret.
Sign your names on the picture somewhere.
I want to put Bibles with it.
Sign your name anywhere you'd like on the picture. And then the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to take a group picture all together. No, listen. Every paint party I do, I get a picture of everybody that painted with their pictures. You can hold it up. I need a picture. You guys are the first art class. You guys are the first art class here. We need to show all the other art classes going on in the future. We need them to see that you guys can paint stuff.
I think I put you in the book.
Huh?
Whatever color you like.
Any color you like.
It's looking like
I think it looks good. I would leave it just the way it is.
It looks good.
No, it looks good. It looks good. It looks really good.
It's meant to be.
That's just the way it is. You're good. All right. So please rinse your brushes in your water. Dry them off. And then put them back in the plastic. And when you get home, you should be cleaning them the way that the Art Sherpa showed you. Use some soap, rub them down, let it burn. Sherpa. Sherpa. The Art Sherpa. You can leave my two brushes, leave them just on the table there. I'll clean them up.
What do you think our talent,
Are we about to sign it?
are we taking our camera? Or are we doing them here?
Wait, where are we signing this again?
Anywhere you like. You are going to take them home. But then you're going to bring them back for when we do the art exhibit.
We're doing it here.
Huh? No. Wait, if you're not gonna hold on to it, you need me to hold on to it, I will hold on to it for you. I'll hold on to your canvas if you need me to. Okay, so we can leave it with me so you don't lose it.
Okay. The last piece is left.
Can I see it now?
Yeah.
All right, so just so you know, your brushes are wooden handles. Your brushes have wooden handles. If you don't follow direction and you keep them in water, what's going to happen is the paint is going to peel off and you can ruin your brushes. Okay? So please take care of them. When everybody's all set, come on up to the front of the room when you finish your picture. Oh, sit down here on the ground.
Wait, what's the homework?
How many people would like paint to go home with? Me. That is going to work on a canvas that is for the art show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I will put paint cups together for everybody. So the deal is that they can go home with paint and a canvas, but they have to bring it back next week, and it has to go in the art show. So this way it gives them a chance to do some more.
Why are you doing that? Like, after the shower,
I take this apron off.
I'm coming to your house.
Can I take this apron thing off?
Leave it on just while we take the picture. Just come on up to the front with your picture, because this way if you leave your apron on, you don't have to worry so much about getting paint on you.
Look at it.
There's already paint on my hand. That's like that.
There it is. All right. You're gonna be up here in the front. I'm gonna have you sit down on your knees. Come back here. Okay.
Everybody got a beautiful suit on.
Come back here. Yes, you're supposed to bring your canvas. Back row.
Yeah, I'm not
Here. Switch places. On your knees here. Up in front on your knees here.
The sweet little angel that made an era. You have to forgive her. Well, you really put your, serious about it. Oh, that's gonna be your,
Here we go. We're gonna stand right here. You're over there. Stay right here. Okay. Move down this way. Move down. Okay. Come on up here and go ahead and back here.
Can I do this?
Come over here. No. Faces down. Up in the front. Underneath. I know. I changed my mind.
oh, you want to
Move over that part. Yep, move over. How many more are we missing?
You mind if you take one with you right there? Oh, no, she's scared. Yeah, just put it over your face. No.
See, man, about it now.
Just put it on, do like this, do like this. We'll just see your pretty hair.
Ready? Hide in the back. Ready? Come on up here.
I don't know.
I'm gonna have you over here. Okay? I'm gonna have you move down the other side, sweetie. Move down. Here we go. Okay? I'm gonna have you stand right there.
Sweetheart.
Okay?
No, it's okay.
There we go. Come over here.
She's trying to put on finish.
Always somebody.
Put my name up.
Oh, don't worry about it. We know what you.
All right.
Did you guys do your initials and everything? There's a lot
Come
of
up here and
people.
kneel for me.
Alicia, you can take your mask off for you.
All right. Back row, come up and slide up closer.
Yeah, just put it
Yeah,
over here.
move up closer.
I don't know. Yeah, you guys, you know how
Come
to
up this way
minimize
closer.
and then,
There we go. All right.
You supposed to be.
smile,
I know.
Alicia.
I want to get a picture of all of them first.
You guys, oh my God, wait till you see the picture.
I know this is dope.
You guys are like amazing.
I love it.
I couldn't even get them all in the.
Leah, move that down. It's hiding your face.
That's what she
No.
wants.
Come on, I want just.
Come on.
Listen,
I
you
want
guys are
one
beautiful.
picture with all
You guys
these
are
pretty
all
ladies.
beautiful.
Can you give me one picture? If you don't want to give it to the parents, that's fine. But can I have one picture with all of your faces, please?
You
Guys
only
have
get
beautiful
here.
faces. Beautiful faces. Look, she's like, look at me.
I'm getting my phone, so if you don't, I'm gonna pull my phone out. Ready? So I can get one picture.
This is
with
for
all
Miss
of your
Kimmy.
faces.
Come on, for Miss Kimmy. Nobody else is gonna see this but Miss Kimmy.
Not with the one. I'm gonna keep everybody's faces this way. It's just for me. Look
You wanna get
how
one of your-
beautiful you ladies look.
Come
Everybody's
on,
faces.
Darren. Come on. This is big stuff here.
With your face, please.
Creativity.
Look how
You
beautiful
guys
you
are
guys
gorgeous.
are.
I can't stand it.
I'll leave you alone now.
I know, they're like, look.
Thank you.
No more
Oh, wait,
pictures.
do you want a picture with me?
No.
You guys don't want one with me?
No, thank you.
I want a picture.
A lot of camera shy people in here. That's great. I'm like,
Come here.
Come
Who wants selfies with me? I'll do selfies with you. Me and Shine do a selfie too.
Yeah, my son.
Who wants to take a selfie with me? Who wants selfies?
Yeah.
Can you, if you could help me, it would be very helpful. Bothering me. If you could pour 2 cups of water. Cup. If you guys could start dumping the water in the kitchen sink directly into the drain. Don't let it splash and make a big mess, okay?
Just the water.
I'll hand them to you if you want to put, the top on.
Thank you. Something else that they can do that you need help with?
If somebody else wants to start collecting the paintbrushes,
I'll do that.
my paintbrushes.
And then when you look at it, when they're like, oh, you need to use like some tomatoes for anything?
Yeah, that would be great. If you want to use one of the cups right here that doesn't have water in it.
Where do I put the paper?
Leave them right on the table. They're getting collected. Actually, if you want to help, no, somebody's already got it.
You want me to do it, try to let it come?
Oh, no, that's part of it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not that deep.
You want to put them in the drain for everybody?
Yeah.
And you guys, make sure you give Miss Kitty back the aprons. She would appreciate that.
Yeah, I have back over there.
You need the easel, you need the easels too, right?
Yes.
Our little love bugs.
We all have our own things,
Lovelies, I'm so sorry, I have to take your items off here. Oh, this is.
Grandma,
Yeah.
did you text my mom?
No, I didn't.
Oh, spaghetti.
I know, that's what she gave me.
Does anyone let Miss Kimmy keep your project? Or you bring it with you?
Right up. You can put it on the table.
Do I put this one out?
Are you giving them these empty ones, the canvases? Are you canvases, girls?
No, those are the emphasis with their paint.